What would you do if failing an interview meant failing your child too? The black single father did not slam the door. He did not argue. He did not beg. He simply turned away from the interview room, shoulders heavy, already thinking about the little boy waiting for him at home. Then the lobby froze. "Mr. Thompson, wait." The voice was urgent. Powerful. Impossible to ignore. A billionaire CEO was running after him. But before that moment, before marble floors and glass walls, there was a small apartment, just after sunrise. Pale light slipped through worn curtains as Randy Thompson moved through a narrow kitchen, running on barely 2 hours of sleep. His hand still smelled of industrial cleaner as he cracked eggs into a pan, movement steady from years of routine. At 35, exhaustion was no longer something to fear. It was normal. Randy worked nights cleaning offices at Whitmore Enterprises. From 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Not because it paid well. Because it let him be home when his son woke up. A soft wheeze broke the quiet. 8-year-old Elijah stood in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Small for his age. Too quiet. Too familiar with pain. Randy heard it instantly. That tight, shallow breath. The warning sound he never ignored. He placed a plate on the table and reached for the inhaler. Light. Almost empty. He shook it, counting silently. Every spray mattered. Without insurance, one refill cost 2 full nights of work. Elijah took the inhaler calmly, then looked up. "Dad, are you tired?" Randy smiled, the kind of smile parents learn to fake. "I'm fine, buddy." "Eat." But Elijah kept watching him. Children always know. For years earlier, Randy had a wife. A steady job. A life that made sense. Then came a car accident. A hospital hallway. And words that never fit together. "We did everything we could." After that, everything changed. Elijah needed him. At night. During asthma attacks. Through nightmares that came without warning. Randy took time off. Then more. Until there was no job left to return to. Now, every resume carried those missing years. And every interview ended the same way. So when Randy walked out of that room, he already believed the answer was no. He just did not know someone had been watching the whole time. Before we continue, if this story touched you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps us create and share more powerful stories like this one. Thank you. Now let's continue. That gap on paper was not just a gap. It was a canyon, and no explanation seemed wide enough to bridge it. Customer service jobs went to younger faces, to people without grief carved into the lines around their eyes. So Randy took what he could get. Night janitor, in a building where, years ago, he might have worn a badge and sat behind a desk. It was a step down, more than one step, but it let him be the father Elijah needed. Elijah finished breakfast, slid from his chair, and before he went to dress for school, he paused by the hook where Randy's worn jacket hung. His small hand slipped something into the pocket, quick and careful. Randy pretended he did not notice. It was their ritual. Little notes, scribbled on scraps of paper, hidden where his dad would find them later. Randy never read them right away. He saved them for the moments when the weight got too heavy, when he needed a reason to keep standing. An hour later, he walked Elijah to school, hand in hand through crowded sidewalks. At the gate, Elijah hugged him hard. "Have a good sleep, Dad." Randy kissed the top of his head. "Have a good day, buddy. I'll pick you up this afternoon." He watched his son disappear inside, then turned for home, carrying a tiredness he refused to show. Back in the apartment, he collapsed on the couch and fell asleep within minutes. That night, he clocked in at Whitmore Enterprises. By day the place buzzed with tailored suits and fast footsteps. By night, it belonged to the invisible ones, the people who made sure the marble shone and the trash was gone before morning. On the 12th floor, near the break room, a notice board caught his eye. He almost walked past it, like everyone else did. But something made him stop. Customer service specialist, day shift, full benefits, including health insurance. He read it again. And again. Day shift meant he could drop Elijah at school and be there to pick him up. Benefits meant insurance. Real insurance. Doctor visits without panic. Inhalers without counting pennies. Emergency room trips without wondering which bill would be sacrificed next. Randy stood there with his mop in his hand, staring like the paper might vanish if he blinked. He had done that work before. He had been good at it. He knew how to listen when someone was angry, how to lower the heat in a voice, how to solve problems other people had given up on. Those skills were still in him, even if the world acted like they did not count anymore. But applying meant stepping into the light. It meant sitting across from people who would see the years missing from his resume, and the years he spent pushing a mop instead of climbing a ladder. It meant questions he had learned to dread. Why did you leave your last job, Randy? What have you been doing these past 4 years? Why should we take a chance on you? He pushed the mop down the hallway, trying to convince himself it was not worth the risk. He had stability now, not much, but enough. Why trade that for the humiliation of hearing no again? Still, the thought stayed with him long after his shift ended. It followed him home, sat with him at breakfast, and lingered when he tucked Elijah into bed the next night. The boy's breathing had been rough again, shallow and tight, and Randy had watched the inhaler sputter, the last spray weaker than the one before. That was the moment he knew. Fear of rejection was nothing compared to fear of not being able to help his son. 2 days later, after another sleepless night, Randy stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting a borrowed tie. It had once belonged to a neighbor who moved out months ago, left behind in a box marked free. The knot was not perfect, but it would do. He pressed his palm against his chest, feeling his heart thud. "You can do this," he whispered, though he was not sure who he was trying to convince. Elijah appeared in the doorway, backpack already on. "You look nice, Dad." Randy smiled. "Thanks, buddy. Big day. You gonna get that job?" "I don't know," Randy said honestly. "But I'm gonna try." Elijah nodded like that answer was enough. He stepped forward and hugged him, tight and fierce. "You always try." Those words followed Randy all the way to the Whitmore building. The interview room was too cold. Across the table sat 2 people, both polite, both distant. They smiled, but their eyes skimmed his resume, lingering on the dates, the gaps. They asked about his experience, and Randy answered clearly, confidently. He spoke about resolving customer issues, about de-escalation, about empathy. He spoke about teamwork, about reliability. Then came the questions he had been bracing for. "So," one of them said gently, "can you explain this employment gap?" Randy did not dodge it. He talked about his wife. The accident. His son. The asthma. The nights in hospital chairs. He did not dramatize it. He did not apologize for it. Silence settled when he finished. The other interviewer folded her hands. "We appreciate your honesty, Mr. Thompson. Truly. But this role requires consistency and a strong recent background in customer-facing work." Randy nodded. He had heard versions of this before. They thanked him for coming. Said they would be in touch. He stood, shook hands, and walked out without argument. By the time he reached the lobby, he already knew the answer. No email. No call. Just another quiet no added to the list. Randy pushed through the glass doors into the open space of the lobby, feeling the familiar mix of disappointment and relief. At least it was over. At least he had tried. He was halfway across the marble floor when he heard his name. Mr. Thompson. At first, he thought it was someone else. He kept walking. Randy. Wait. The voice was firm now. Urgent. He turned. A man in an immaculate suit was striding toward him, moving fast enough that people stepped aside. Silver hair. Sharp eyes. No badge. No clipboard. But everyone else in the lobby seemed to recognize him. It was Jonathan Whitmore, the CEO. The billionaire whose name was etched on the building itself. Randy's stomach dropped. He wondered if he had done something wrong. Missed a form. Broken some rule. Sir, he said, unsure. Whitmore stopped in front of him, slightly out of breath. I just sat in on the end of your interview. Randy's chest tightened. I see. You didn't argue, Whitmore said. You didn't complain. You didn't try to sell a story. You just told the truth and accepted the outcome. Randy shrugged. That's life. Whitmore studied him for a long moment. Do you know how rare that is? Before Randy could answer, Whitmore gestured toward a bench near the window. Sit with me for a moment. People stared as they sat. Randy felt every eye, every assumption. Whitmore leaned forward. I started this company with nothing. I cleaned offices at night. Floors just like these. Randy looked at him, surprised. I listen to people all day who tell me what they think I want to hear, Whitmore continued. You didn't. And that tells me more than any resume. Randy swallowed. With respect, sir, they already made their decision. Whitmore smiled slightly. They did. I haven't. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a card. Come to my office tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. Randy stared at it, afraid to hope. What is this? He asked. A second chance, Whitmore said simply. One you earned by being exactly who you are. As Whitmore stood and walked away, Randy remained seated, card trembling in his hand, wondering if, for the first time in years, life had finally decided to meet him halfway. That night, Randy barely slept. The business card sat on the kitchen table, right next to the inhaler, like two versions of his future staring back at him. He read Elijah a story, tucked him in, and lay awake listening to the slow rise and fall of his son's chest. At dawn, he was already dressed. Jonathan Whitmore's office was nothing like the interview room. Warm light. Bookshelves instead of white walls. A window that looked out over the city, not down at it. Whitmore waved him in like they were old friends. Coffee? Yes, sir. Thank you. They talked for nearly an hour. Not about gaps. Not about titles. About people. About pressure. About what it meant to keep showing up when nobody was watching. You know, Whitmore said finally, I checked your work record. Night shifts. Perfect attendance. No complaints. Supervisors say you're calm, respectful, reliable. Randy nodded. I try to be. Whitmore leaned back. I don't need another polished voice. I need someone customers trust when things go wrong. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was an offer. Same role. Same benefits. Start date circled in pen. Randy's vision blurred. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. Whitmore stood and extended his hand. Welcome back to the front desk, Randy. Randy shook it, grounding himself in the moment. Thank you, he said quietly. You won't regret this. I already don't, Whitmore replied. That afternoon, Randy picked Elijah up from school early. The boy ran to him, backpack bouncing. Dad? What happened? Randy crouched and smiled. We're gonna be okay. Elijah hugged him hard, then pulled back. Like, inhaler okay? Like inhaler okay, Randy said, laughing through the lump in his throat. That night, Randy opened the jacket pocket and pulled out one of Elijah's notes. It read, in crooked letters, you always get back up. Years later, when Randy had grown into the role, when he trained new hires and mentored people who reminded him of his younger self, he kept that note in his wallet. Not as proof of success. As a reminder. Because second chances do not come from perfect resumes. They come from honesty, endurance, and the quiet courage to keep walking forward, even when the door seems closed. And sometimes, just sometimes, someone is watching who understands exactly how hard that walk has been.